Okay, we're going to talk about 12.8, which is random samples and surveys. How many books did you read this week? What are your hobbies? Statisticians use questions like these in surveys to get information about specific groups. A population is a group about which you want information. A sample is part of the population used to make them estimates about the population. The larger your sample, the more reliable your estimates will be. For a random sample, each member of the population has an equal chance to be selected. A random sample is likely to be representative of the whole population. So we want random. We don't want to just be picking whatever we feel like. We want to make sure it's a random sample. You want to find out whether students will participate if you start a recycling program at your school. Tell whether each survey plan describes a good sample. The first one, interview every 10th teenager you see at the mall. This is probably not a good example. I'm just not going to write it out the reasoning, but I want you to listen. This one's not. No. Oops. Ooh, that's a messy mess. Let's say no. This is not a good example. And why this is not a good example is because if you're interviewing every 10th teenager at the mall, the 10th teenager might not even go to your school. And if you're looking at a recycling program at your school, he or she is not really going to care what you do with your recycling program. Second one, interview the students in the ecology class. It's better you're getting students at your school, but this one is no too because you're only getting one viewpoint, the ecology class, which deals with science, which deals with land. They're going to be say, yeah, we should start recycling program where maybe majority of people don't want to. And the last one, it says interview every 10th student leaving a school assembly. And I say, yes, this probably would be a better example. And the reason I say that is because every 10th one you're getting a random sample. That every 10th is a random. And you're doing your school assembly means you're getting your students at the school. So that's probably a better sample as you go through. Explain whether each plan describes a good example. You want to know which bicycle is most popular. You plan to survey entrance as a bicycle race. Now that probably wouldn't be a good example either, because the fact that if you're surveying the people at a bicycle race, they probably like their bikes. They probably have more expensive bikes than the average person, so you're not getting a random sample. You want to know how often teens rent videos. You plan to survey teens going into a local video store. Better, you're saying, okay, well, how often do you rent? But if they're going to the video store there already, they're probably renting more often. So you're probably not your data might be skewed or it might be one way saying they're going to rent more often when you should do a random sample because you're probably going to get people that say I don't rent it off at all. And we need those numbers too. So interviewing at the video store as people coming in, that's probably not a best place to go. And you want to know the most popular breakfast cereal. You plan to survey people entering a grocery store. Now, if they're entering the grocery store, means they might be buying cereal, you might be not. So you're taking a random sample, saying that's not a bad sample because you don't know if they're going to go get cereal. Now, in the previous example, when they're going into a video store, you know they're going to rent a video. Here, we don't know what they're going to buy. They're going to a grocery store. So this is a very good random sample as you go through. Random means you're getting a good selection of the population. If you could think of some people that are omitted from the population, then that's not a good example. So let's try some of this. Now we're going to use our surveying to do this. From 20,000 calculators produced, manufacturer takes a random sample of 500 calculators. The sample has 3 defective calculators. Estimate the total number of defective calculators. Well, if we went here and it says every 3 out of 500 are defective. Well, I don't know. Let's go to our calculator. Let's get that figured out. 3 out of 500. .006. So that's 0.006 of the calculators are defective. So now if we take 20,000 times 0.006, so we took 20,000 times 0.006, and we're going to get 120 defective calculators. So out of the 20,000 calculators, about 120 of them are defective. Okay, use the data below. In sample B, how many of the 20,000 calculators would you estimate to be defective? Okay, now in sample B, you had 2 out of 200, so it'll be 1 out of 100. So about 1% of them are defective. If we took 20,000 calculators times 0.01, we're going to end up with about 200. I believe, say 20,000. Yep, 200 calculators. So if we use this sample, we ended up with 120, I believe it was. This sample, we're going to end up with 200 defective calculators. Now it says, would you expect the estimate based on sample C to be more accurate or less accurate than the one based on sample B? Now in sample C, it says 0 out of 50, so there'll be 0 calculators here defective as you go through. So now, would you expect the estimate based on sample C to be more accurate or less accurate than based on sample B? Now I'd say less. And the reason I say less accurate is because the sample size is so much smaller. The smaller the sample size, the less accurate it is. So therefore it's a less accurate. Explain why would you take a sample rather than counting or surveying an entire population. Taking a sample is a lot easier to do. If you're trying to do the whole population, 20,000 calculators is a lot to do. If you had to interview 20,000 people, that would be a lot of people to do. So you want to take a smaller sample as you go through. Okay, you want to find how popular basketball is at your school. Tell whether each survey plan describes a good sample. Explain. You interview the 10 tallest students in your school. Not a good sample because the fact that they're most likely in basketball. Interview 20 students after picking their ID numbers at random. That's a good example. You're interviewing students, you're picking the IDs at random. That's a good way to do it. Number 3, interviewing 30 students watching a basketball game. If they're already watching the basketball game, they're probably interested in it, so that's probably not a good example. These are just some of the ways I want you to look at it. Think of a question you can have from this section and what you want to do, and bring it to class tomorrow and we'll talk about it. So, I don't think there's another page. Nope. Thank you.